You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to continue our coverage of the T20 World Cup from 2021. Today's game was between Sri Lanka and Australia. Sri Lanka batted first. They put a decent score on the board, but Australia rolled back the years, or at least as far as Warner and Finch were concerned, and chased it down with quite a lot of ease, to be honest. Really good performance from the men in yellow, the canary yellow Aussies. The sad lion on the Sri Lanka shirt got a little bit sadder today. That's disappointing. And if we have time at the end, we're on the clock a little bit today. If we have time at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the IPL rules, which were confirmed today. We'll do a proper show on that after the T20 World Cup and so on. But we'll try and cover it a little bit today. I am Jack Cope. I am joined by Ross Legg in his Ajax shirt, ready to go and play football in about 44 minutes' time. Are you pumped, Ross?
I couldn't be more. I'm inspired by David Warner. I mean, my footballing career was okay, and now that's gone off a cliff. I'm hoping for a David Warner renaissance like I had tonight. So let's hope the opposition are as bad as Sri Lanka's bowling.
Great. Before we get into that, though, Ross, we have messages for our listeners, for our viewers.
Yeah, we do indeed. We are sponsored by Woodstock Cricket, so go onto their website, get one of their great cricket bats, and use code TCP25 and you get 25% off. If you're watching this on YouTube, then press like and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 10K. We're going great guns. We're like 8,500, so continue to do that. Share it with your friends and get involved in the comments, and then follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Cricket Pod. You would have seen today us interacting with David Gower over the shenanigans of Shoaib Akhtar and Dr.
That was weird, wasn't it? We got ratioed by Gower. Which doesn't happen every day. That was weird. I mean, let's start with that really quickly. Did you see that? How odd was that whole shebang?
I just thoroughly, if that is how Pakistan always do coverage, I want to watch it every single time. It was
yeah, they need to get that round the world. They need to do what we're doing here, put it on YouTube. If they did that, we'd be out of business immediately. They had a 9-person panel. It had Viv Richards and David Gower and Shoaib Akhtar on the panel. Halfway through the show, Shoaib Akhtar quits because the host, I don't know, just starts accusing him of being rude or something. It was no idea what was going on. David Gower is sort of sitting next to the host, doing like peacekeeping gestures with his hands. Complete and utter carnage. I have so many questions. And yeah, like you say, it's all sort of filmed on a 1990 or 1980s TV set. It looks like a clip from a world summit from Independence Day or something like that. But the camera they're using is like one of those 1997 cameras. So everything, there's about 19 pixels for the whole screen. It's complete carnage.
But this is what I absolutely love about Pakistan cricket, the coverage of it, the play. Like the team could not be doing any better.
They're amazing.
They are absolutely brilliant to watch. They're brilliant to follow. But then their administrative side of the organisation, chaos, absolute chaos, and they're still thriving. Then the coverage of it, especially like they've just recorded one of their all-time great, if not their biggest, other than winning the final, their biggest win in World Cup history, right? They're kind of in that position, other than winning the competitions.
It's in the frame, yeah.
A 10-wicket win over this India side, it's fantastic. And yet then afterwards is just, again, complete and utter, just like anarchy between their own people. It's amazing.
Get it up on YouTube is what I say. Look, maybe we should buy the rights to it and just put it out through the Cricket Podcast, Cricket Podcast name. Ross, let's talk about today's cricket. Sri Lanka taking on the Aussies. Sri Lanka bat first. Do you want to give us a quick summary?
Well, you were on Guerrilla Cricket, weren't you, with Max?
Yeah, today? I was, but I don't write a summary if I'm doing that. I don't have any notes.
Well, it was the same old thing for Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, it was some of their players decided that they realised how to play 2020 cricket. Others decided I don't really like playing 2020 cricket. So what a breath of fresh air Asalanka is in this side. He came out and I think he hit 5 boundaries in his first 6 balls, or 4 boundaries in his first 5 balls, and then almost played out a maiden over to Hazelwood just to kind of demonstrate, you know what, I've got this in the bag. But the lineup for Australia, I think their bowling lineup showed the depth in quality they have today, but also showed the fallibility. They've obviously got that piece where they're trying to steal a couple of overs between Glenn Maxwell and Marcus Stoinis to make sure that they go batting heavy. But teams need to be able to target that, right? South Africa didn't particularly target that very well, whereas Sri Lanka did here. And I thought for a moment they were actually going to build out a pretty good score. Pereira at Sri Lanka was going well. But then the kind of wheels fell off. Like Starc bowled an unbelievably good Yorker to get out Pereira. Adam Zampa with his very subtle but very gross mullet kind of came onto the scene.
Disgusting, isn't it?
I mean, he bowled 4 overs, 2 for 12. Like the guy,
The bowling was filthy as well.
Yeah,
it was filthy bowling. It was in the good terms, oh, look at that ball, it's filthy. Not like the Chameera ball that didn't bounce on the pitch, which was filthy.
I think you've got a career in reading out erotic fiction as audio books there.
He was good though. Yeah, keep going.
It was really good, and I thought it was again just that the plans from Sri Lanka just seemed a little bit off. So they only ended up posting 154, which is actually better than I thought they were going to do at one point. There was some good hitting down the bottom again from Rajapaksa. Australia came out though, and David Warner decided that he knew how to bat again, and Aaron Finch hit his highest score in the UAE. And was this because they are unbelievably talented individuals, or was this down to the fact that Sri Lanka decided, what Australians don't like is short bowling that goes wide of off stump and could just be crunched away. I think Jared Kimber on his on Twitter said Sri Lanka have now scientifically proven that Aaron Finch can play the cut shot, and I thought
that summed it up, really, didn't it?
It was just a bit surprising to me. It was just really surprising. I think we'll get into kind of their bowling strategy, but again, it was quite a dominant performance from Australia, and an easy win.
Well, just to sort of emphasise how poor the Sri Lankan fast bowlers were, they bowled 8 overs for 100 runs. If that had been replicated across all 20, they'd conceded 250 runs in a 20-over innings. That's a world record. Or a T20 World Cup record. They were shockingly bad. Anyway, let's get back to the first innings, because I actually really rated how Sri Lanka played this. Now, I know they end up with 154. They end up being, it gets chased down pretty easily. But I think the chase has got more to do with the fast bowling unit completely melting, to be honest, than it has the batting, which I think is one of the best innings we've seen batting first in this Super 12. Now there's not a lot of contenders. Let's caveat that really quickly. But I thought they were pretty good. They lost a wicket in the power play, and I tweeted, I know what will happen here. They'll get to the end of the power play. They'll be on about 30. Then they'll panic, lose a couple more wickets, be on 60 after 11 overs, and completely screw this up post 130, and it'll be chased down easily. But actually, no, they carried on going. Sri Lanka, Kusal Pereira had a really decent partnership and put the Australians under a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. I thought there were a couple of things. There's Aaron Finch. I don't know what you thought about this. I thought he was like Dr. Jekyll on the one hand and Mr. Hyde on the other. I thought when he brought back Starc at that point in the game, it was like absolutely spot on. It was the game's getting away from them. A couple more overs of this, and Sri Lanka are on for 170, and that's big trouble for Australia. And I think the score predictor said they would get 170 at this point. Starc comes on. If he's not in the top 5 seam bowlers in T20 cricket, then I'll eat my hat. I just think he's so good, so dynamic.
It's just hit, right? So how do you play the 90-mile-an-hour Yorker?
Well, this was it. He got hit for that 6, and it was just like, right, no. It was like my dad in the back garden when I was a kid. You play one good shot, and then it's like next ball, 95 or 90. Was it 91 miles an hour? It swung a good 6 inches, missed the bat.
And that just says how good your dad used to be at garden cricket.
Exactly.
He's 91 mile an hour Yorkers going rocketing in.
No, exactly. Cleans up Pereira. Zampa at the other end's doing his thing, and you've already mentioned his figures, keeping Sri Lanka busy. And I think, unfortunately for Sri Lanka, it's they are quite an inexperienced side. They've got a couple of good players, I think. They're a little bit like baby Australia in a way. Do you get what I mean? Like Australia, they've got a lot of average players with Maxwell and Starc. And Sri Lanka, they probably got a lot of below average players with 4 or 5 average or slightly above average players.
So you think, you think the next evolution is they turn into Australia?
Well, the next evolution is they get rid of players like Avishka Fernando, because there's a big drop off in the expected outcomes of their top 3 versus Avishka Fernando, who I don't know why he's in there. Maybe they've got like some deal with maybe they've got like some black magic deal where they have to have somebody batting in their top 4 who has a strike rate below 100, and the Dinesh Chandimal lasted for too long. He's had 50 innings. Dinesh Chandimal, his strike rate is 104. Fernando, 26 innings now, sub 100 strike rate. He's on course to be the slowest man ever in T20 cricket. I mean, I can't see why else they'd be picking him. But the general point I'm getting at here, Ross, is that as good as Pereira, Asalanka, Rajapaksa, were around the others, there were also some pretty out of their depth players, I think, in this, and are some pretty out of their depth players in the Sri Lanka side, and that's been covered up against the weak teams. You know, they haven't played anyone good so far, and I'm not saying Australia are amazing, but they're not actually bad. And I think they've got
some superstars in this team, right? There are some big name players in here who, like you saw it today, and we'll get onto the bowling in a minute. But it was there was a huge step up between bowling and out bowling the Netherlands, or bowling at their batsmen,
or even Bangladesh. You know, we talked yesterday's show. Me and Dan talked about Bangladesh in detail about why they're bad and you know what the problems are. There's a huge step between Bangladesh and Australia in neutral conditions. Yeah, but carry on with your point.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was there's a huge difference between going in and going, right, do you know what, we got some fast bowlers here, we've got some mystery spinners, and people who have not used to playing, say, 85 miles an hour. Not saying that the bowlers continually bowl at 85, because they don't, but it's still a big step up for someone like the Netherlands team to go in and face that. It's a good combo. Here, like, who do you think like Finch and Warner are playing against in the nets? They're not like rolling out. Right, come on, stick your old bowling boots on there, Grandad, and come and bowl us 60 mile an hour dobbers. They got Starc, they got Cummings, they got Hazelwood. These guys are bowling heat in the nets. They're not taking it easy on them. So they know with the second that someone comes in and bowls a 78 mile an hour bouncer at them, they're just like, well, that's going to go for 4 or 6. And I thought their whole approach to the bowling here was completely wrong. I think they misread how to deal with the power play. I think they let Warner and Finch, who both are under pressure, right? Finch has not hit a run like in years in that. He's got like something like 6 ducks. He's got the most ducks as a T20 captain. Warner scratching around for form, and they could not believe their luck today.
Good, no. Back to the Sri Lanka innings just really quick, because I wanted to finish off that point about Finch, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I thought bringing back Starc was great. I thought he captained Zampa really well. I think he did blow Stoinis and what's his name? Maxi, yeah. Now, I between the two of them, what did they get? They went for, so I'm just doing the maths as we go. They went for 51 from 4 overs. So the rest of the other 16 overs effectively went at a runner ball, or a bit less than a runner ball, or around a runner ball, maybe a bit more than a runner ball, sorry. And those two blew up. I thought that actually Stoinis, I thought they were thrown under the bus a little bit, both of them, in this situation. Not necessarily Maxwell. Maxwell came on to bowl against 2 left-handers. You know, he gets hit for 16. He's a part-time bowler. You have to accept that's going to happen. What I think that Finch should have done is got another over out of Maxwell in that, when he had that good matchup, and being like, no, trust the process, trust the matchup, trust Maxwell's bowling here. Try and get another one out of the way, because by not doing that, he left a situation where either he bowled 3 overs of Stoinis in a row in the middle to 2 left-handers, and the matchup data again shows that Stoinis is way better against right-handers than left-handers, and got duly punished because he only bowled to left-handers, 35 off his 3 overs. But if you, long story short, Finch bottled it a little bit around that. I think if Australia are going to do this, split the bowling between Stoinis and Maxwell, then I think they really need to trust the right matchup situation, because they can't have a situation against England. You can't have Stoinis bowling to Moeen Ali at the death.
No.
That's
Yeah.
suicide.
Even Morgan is taking him down. I agree with you. I thought in the power play there should have been one of those things of going, do you know what? Let's try and target this. And I thought Maxwell going for 16. Like you've seen it in some of the captains, right? So even when like Adil Rashid maybe has a bad over, he doesn't just then bowl one over, or Moeen Ali, for example.
Moeen Ali, perfect example, went for 10 off his first over yesterday, and Morgan wasn't like, well, cancel the experiment. Like, no, he was like, just bowl the next one because it's this is a good matchup for us.
It's a confidence thing, right? Maxwell, you've seen, is a confidence player. Look at his absolute train wreck at Punjab Kings in the last IPL, and compared to this IPL, right? Like that level of confidence is critical to Australia's success. He didn't fire with the ball today, didn't fire with the bat today. That happened in T20 cricket. But there's a real challenge on Finch's hands there to keep his spirits up.
Yeah, 154 is what Sri Lanka ended up with. Decent score, I thought. It gave them a decent chance against Australia if they took early wickets. Unfortunately for them, they didn't. Warner 65 or 42, 10 fours. Kind of a classic Warner innings, to be honest. And then Finch.
I thought he looked good, actually. I think he got dropped. He got dropped an 18.
Oh, we need to talk about that drop.
That is probably worst drop of the World Cup.
I think so. Yeah.
Right.
Max sent me a message. It was great work from the keeper. Watched it all the way into his elbows. It happens. It probably cost them a serious chance at winning this game.
I thought their fielding was absolutely dreadful today, actually. And I think for some reason, there was a big bit, and I know we've spoken about it with Dan on the podcast before, but among some of the analysts around how important fielding actually is in the grand scheme of things. But in games like this, you've got to fucking take your chances like that. For goodness sake, there's nothing around that bit, is there?
Well, I think it's massive, I think, for wicket keepers, but because we don't have someone worked this out. I mean, the wicket keeper in a T20 match touches the ball virtually every single delivery, either it being collected from a field or throwing it in, or behind the stumps. They also have more chances to take catches than any other player. So you don't want a guy who's going to drop a clanger like that. Like it's super negative value if that guy is costing you half a chance a game, or even a third of a chance over 3 matches. Because that's, I don't want to get too much into the maths, but it's that you're leaving big runs on the table over 3 games if you're giving the team the opposition an extra wicket, if you're giving a set batter every 3 games an extra life. Now it doesn't always manifest itself in 65 or 42 balls. Obviously, that's not always what happens, but it can do. And I think you're absolutely right. That if that isn't the drop of the World Cup, then I really look forward to laughing at the one that's coming up, because that was astonishing.
And there's a piece here, like when you are looking around for a bit of form, David Warner today could not have asked for anything better, right? If there's something that David Warner has faced, like that 10,000 hours of, or 10,000 balls of, he has faced like relatively low quality pacers thinking they're better than they are on a half decent track. And it just sat up for him. And like the fact that he was pulling Chameera in front of square and being like, yeah, bowl it again, mate. Go on, do that. And that's a horrible place to be in when you're a bowler. Only his only saving grace here for his form in the IPL is that he didn't get to face a bowling lineup like this, right? That would have been Sunrisers Hyderabad's bowling lineup doing that to him. So that's the position he was in.
Yeah. Finch also pretty decent. Maxwell, you covered that. There's nothing to talk about there. Steve Smith played like the innings of Steve Smith's dreams, basically, didn't he? 28 off 26, no pressure on, just rotate the strike.
One boundary.
And then Marcus Stoinis, who's the man of the moment at the moment, 16 off 7, on a quest to become the world's best finisher. Ross, based on this innings, is he there yet?
No, he's not there, is he? Not quite yet. But I think he's.
228 strike rate. Finish that game.
Yeah, I think he's but it's not that bit where it's going down to the wire and he's chasing like 190 and has pulled it out of the bag Andre Russell style, is he? But I do think like Stoinis has showed in the last couple of years, like he was the leading run scorer in the Big Bash. I think he did really well in the IPL when the IPL was last in the UAE as well for Delhi. And has unfortunately picked up some injuries this season. So I mean, Australia getting him back to fitness and him bowling 3 overs, regardless if it was a good or bad tactics, more runs and more miles in the legs. So yeah, I think their team's maybe starting to peak at the right time, or might be able to start to peak at the right time. Unfortunately for them, they've got England on Saturday.
Yeah, I don't think Australia are quite as they're not full muggage. Sometimes I disagree with Dan a little bit on how good Australia are. I think he's right. Josh Inglis should be playing. I don't understand Mitchell Marsh at all. But I think any team with Starc, any team with Maxwell, even Zampa, you probably throw him in. Any team with those three players is going to be dangerous as long as they don't have too many massively weak links around them. And frankly, they don't, as long as they captain that fifth bowler situation reasonably well. Because Cummins, not a great T20 bowler. Hazelwood, not necessarily a great T20 bowler, but they're not below average. They're fine. They can do a job. Nobody's saying, "Oh, well, let's take down Pat Cummins in this game." It's.
Yeah, I also like the fact that they shifted their batting order, right? They realised, we need to go for net run rate. I think I would have liked them to actually just keep on demoting Steve Smith in this regard. I think they should have gone for it. I think that was probably they almost did the right thing. Yeah, they almost did the right thing.
Their net run rate is plus 0.7. They dealt the Sri Lanka had a decent net run rate after beating Bangladesh, and that's been dealt a big blow. So Australia, they probably realistically they might only need to win one of 3 matches against Bangladesh, West Indies, and England to go through. As long as they're not pounded in the other 2, then they should go through. Which is a bit of a shame, but it is. I think it's a little bit of. We said this yesterday. I think it's a weak group. I hoped that Sri Lanka would be better today than they were. And they didn't look very good.
They rolled over and had their bellies tickled, didn't they? Really. And I think when it comes to looking at the West Indies now have to win every single game. They've put themselves in that position. Australia have now
and they have to smash teams.
Yeah. So it's a long road back, and I think as you said, Australia have put themselves in a really good position here.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to go through and lose to Pakistan in the semis. Which Pakistan v Australia in semis could be quite a good final, because both teams 150 is like the golden land, so it could be 150 v 150 with 2 good bowling lineups. I'm up for that. World's best finisher Marcus Stoinis potentially winning it with 6 off the last ball off Shaheen Afridi. I reckon that's what I'm going to say.
Okay. Well, I also like the fact that this is going to be a really good test for the England side. Like England have walked over 2 teams, and I think this Australia side, that there is always a fight. Right, except in the World Cup semi-final where we absolutely trounced them. But there is that bit where they're going to be a really good opponent for gauging how good this England team actually are, because they're going to be the first team to actually put up a proper fight.
Right, Ross, we've got time for about 5, 6, 7 minutes of IPL. What was the news today? So we've got with me and Max the other day. I think it was me and Max. We discussed the 2 new franchises. One at Ahmedabad, the Modi Dome, one in Lucknow at that massive stadium that was Afghanistan's home ground for a while. What has come out today from the cricketing?
The cricketing gods are the BCCI.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly that, but I thought, let's not overdo it.
So the money-making machine of the IPL rumbles on. It's gone to the next level now, isn't it? Really, we sometimes talk about cricket business. And this is the real money spinner now. Both of the teams have been sold for hundreds of millions. But today it was announced about the retention policy that's going to come out. So it's now going to be a mega auction. The mega auction was postponed due to coronavirus. Now they're getting 10 teams, and they put some rules in place. So the existing teams are going to have the opportunity to retain 4 of their current squad. They can either do 3 Indian players and 1 overseas, I think it is, or 2 Indians and 2 overseas. Is that right?
Yeah. They wrote this in a really weird way. It was they wrote it like that. What they should have said: you can retain 4, maximum 2 overseas.
Yeah, that'd be much easier to say. And then,
Hold on. Actually, no. Then you'd have had to because if you said that, then you could have had no overseas. So they had to do it that way. They were right.
fine.
BCCI were right.
Oh, well, so they have to have an overseas, at least one overseas, and they have to retain at least two Indians in the side. And then the new teams get to choose 3 players, and it's not been made clear yet whether it's from the total pool of the players, because obviously the pool is going to be extended. So there's going to be more people who put the hat in the ring for 2022. Some people might retire, but if I'm a cricketer over the age of 35, I'm putting myself in this auction and being like, CSK might well put me up here.
You want one more go round.
Yeah, I kind of it's an interesting thing. So they've got to clarify that point, because it could be the people who the teams are not keeping, and the players also have the choice in that. So CSK might well turn around and be like, we want to keep Gaikwad, keep Dhoni, keep Sam Curran or whatever, and Sam Curran might go, actually, I want to go elsewhere. Not saying he will want to do that, just an example. So if they goes into the player pool, so they've got to clarify that bit. But I think it's actually quite a good place to be actually for them. I think it gives a little bit of an advantage to the incumbents, but
yeah, but you kind of want that, don't you? I don't think you necessarily want a new team coming in a first year and it being completely equal first year. You have to work for it. You have to build your team properly. But the way they're doing it this way means that they have a little bit of parity. You know, you can pick up 2 Indians, 1 overseas, as if you're Lucknow or you're Ahmedabad, and you can start with somewhat of a squad. I think there are a couple of other things that haven't necessarily been clarified. One is that the amount of money for players is going to go up. I think it's 90 crore next year, which is 12 million US, which is 9-10 million quid. Which is decent. Obviously, the number of games is increasing up from 60 to 74. I don't think they've really announced how long the schedule will be. And what's the other thing they've not announced?
It's more like 74, isn't it? It's 94, isn't it?
No, 74. Yeah, so not everyone plays everyone. It's still 14 games per side. Pretty sure it's 74. I could have gone completely loopy, but I did my research for this. 74.
It's a well-researched pod.
7s and 9s do look similar. If you just glance in, they are actually quite similar numbers when you're speed reading the Hindustan Times, like we often are. The other thing that I don't think has been 100% clarified is the overseas situation. And I'd like to ask your opinion on this. So each team last year in the IPL, obviously 4 overseas, 7 Indians. That's the makeup of your starting 11. I've heard rumours being batted around that they're thinking of upping that to 5. I saw Akash Chopra was saying this on the Twitter. What would your call be if you were Mr. BCCI, Mr. Ganguly?
If I'm looking for the quality to go up in this kind of space, then I'm moving it to 5 overseas players, because there is a bit like sometimes you've seen it at Rajasthan Royals, right? The domestic dearth of talent in India is pretty high. Like there's some amazing players who don't play for India, and you're kind of sitting there going, do you know what, this guy has an opportunity. But I think you need to keep. There's
also Shivam Dubey.
I mean, he's far richer than both of you and I, mate. So we've got nothing to talk about. But I think there is a bit around, you need to keep the quality of the product up. And I think when you're expanding to 10 teams, I think there is a real bit here where you don't want it to start diluting the quality of it. So I think they need to go to 5 overseas. I think it makes the auction far more interesting. I think it makes the dynamics far more interesting. And I think it actually, again, plays to the parity point that we raised earlier. I think it gives a little bit more parity to the 2 newcomers.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically exactly that. If you look at the makeup of a 10-team league, the average starters, you can either have a situation where it's 70 Indians and 40 overseas making up these average sides, or 60 Indians and 50 overseas. If you want quality, you have to go 60-50, because the drop-off between the 61st or the 60th and the 70th best Indian domestic player is much more significant than the drop-off between the 40th and the 50th best overseas. Most of the overseas players between 40th and 50th, you're talking like, bring Mitchell Starc in. They're really good. Or Liam Livingstone plays every game. They're serious players. I don't really want to see the next worst player after Shivam Dubé. If I'm really honest. Now, if you're Indian and you're listening to this, you're listening to this, you might be like, well, we are interested in the next best from the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. As a viewer, I'm not, and I think that's a problem if you're running the IPL, because there are other franchise leagues where the quality is high. Take the PSL, 6-team league, so it's already a more concentrated player pool. I think it might only be 3 overseas there, but 6-team league, you'll suddenly find a situation where the difference between the best PSL team and the best IPL team won't be that much difference, because there are make weights in every single 11 in the IPL, and I don't think that's a great situation. The other, and this is the final point just before we wrap up the show, the sort of player that will will go up in relative value are ball eaters, because they can cover for the make weight. The managed pandays of the land are suddenly more important to an average, or to a managed panda. What I'm saying, Ross, is more important to a bad T20 side than he is to a good T20 side. To a good T20 side, he's irrelevant. But if you have 2 batters in your side, or 1 batter in your side who is literally useless, then you need somebody who can bat for 30 balls, even if their run rate isn't high, because they add value over Joe fucking shit muncher. So
Vijay Shankar.
So what we don't want a situation where managed Pandey is worth money. We want him, out. We want to see the best. We want to see the best league in the world. We want to see the best league in the world. And if we're going to have 74 games of it, don't downgrade the quality. Is all we're saying. Ross, final messages for our listeners before we wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening. We've had a couple new Patreons today, so thank you ever so much. We'll do a readout of the names on the next show.
Adam Dallimore.
Well, there we go. We are not going to be around tomorrow, because it's Friday night, so everyone gets a day off in terms of that, except the cricketers. And we are sponsored by Woodstock. You know the code TCP25. Follow us, like us at the Cricket Pod, and subscribe to this video.
See you later, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us once more.